Hired to help his daughter, I never knew the billionaire needed saving too. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The day I took the job, I thought it would be just another routine assignment, a few weeks helping a quiet little girl learn to speak again. The mansion was massive, the kind of place that smelled like money and silence. Every step I took echoed through marble halls and cold air. They said the man I'd work for was powerful, private, and impossible to please. None of that mattered to me. I needed the job. My student loans were drowning me, and my mother's medical bills didn't stop coming, even after she was gone. I told myself I was doing this for stability, not for hope. But hope has a funny way of sneaking in when you least expect it. The first time I saw him, Mr. Donovan, he stood at the top of the staircase, tall, tailored, and guarded like a fortress. His eyes were sharp but tired, the kind of tired that money can't fix. "You're here for my daughter," he said flatly. "Her name is Lila. She doesn't talk. Don't expect her to." I nodded, clutching the worn leather notebook my mother once used for her therapy sessions. "I don't expect miracles," I said softly. "Just moments." He looked at me for a long second, unreadable, before turning away. "Moments don't change much around here," he murmured. The little girl was sitting on the floor of a vast playroom, drawing invisible lines on a blank sheet of paper. Her hair fell over her face, and she didn't look up when I entered. I knelt down beside her, setting my bag gently on the carpet. "Hi, Lila," I said, keeping my voice warm and calm. "I'm Claire. I'm going to be here for a while, if that's okay with you." No answer. Just the sound of her pencil scratching softly. In the corner of my eye, I caught a family portrait, Mr. Donovan, his late wife, and a smiling Lila, maybe 4 years old then. The woman had his eyes, but softer. Now, that same house felt like a museum of grief. I spent the next few hours exploring quietly, trying to learn the rhythm of the place. Every clock ticked too loudly, every room too clean. The staff spoke in whispers, like even their words might disturb the ghosts that lived there. By sunset, I was already questioning if I could reach that child or her father. When I returned to my small guest room, I opened my notebook and wrote a single line. "Healing begins where silence ends." I didn't know then how true those words would become. Somewhere downstairs, I heard the faint sound of piano keys being pressed, hesitant, broken. I didn't know it yet, but that melody was his way of saying what he couldn't. That he was the one who needed saving most of all. The next morning began with the soft hum of rain against the tall windows. I woke early, still unsure of my place in that vast, echoing house. The smell of coffee drifted faintly from the kitchen, but the silence swallowed everything else. I tightened my cardigan and stepped into the hallway. The marble floors were cold under my feet, and every portrait on the wall seemed to watch me pass. When I reached the playroom, Lila was already there, sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing on the same blank sheet of paper. I knelt beside her and smiled. "Good morning, sunshine," I said softly. She did not look up, just pressed her crayon harder until it snapped. My heart ached for her. "That happens," I said, handing her another one. "I used to break them all the time, too." Her small hand hesitated before taking it. It was progress, small but real. Behind me, I heard a low voice. "She has not spoken in almost a year. Do not push her." Mr. Donovan stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up, phone in one hand, eyes sharper than yesterday. I nodded respectfully. "I will not," I said. "But I will not give up either." He studied me, as if trying to decide whether I was naive or brave, then simply said, "Breakfast is in the East Room." The day unfolded slowly. I joined them at the long dining table where the sound of silverware seemed louder than any conversation. Lila picked at her food. "Mister," Donovan scrolled through emails, and I tried not to feel like an intruder in someone else's grief. When he left for work, the staff relaxed a little, and I learned small things: how the chef used to make Lila's favorite pancakes every Sunday, how the piano had not been played since the accident, how the entire house dimmed whenever her father was home. That afternoon, I decided to bring a bit of light back. I found an old music box on the shelf in the playroom, its lid covered in dust. I wound it once, and a delicate melody filled the air. Lila froze, her eyes flicking toward the sound, then back at me. "Do you like it?" I asked. For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of recognition, a shadow of memory. She reached out and touched the spinning ballerina inside. A small, almost inaudible sound escaped her lips, half breath, half word. My heart jumped. "That is beautiful," I whispered. "You do not have to speak. Just listen. It is okay." That evening, as I was packing my notebook, I noticed Mr. Donovan watching from the hallway. "She reacted to the music," I said quickly, nervous to sound too hopeful. "That is something, right?" He hesitated, then nodded. "It was her mother's," he said quietly. "She used to play that melody every night before bed." The pain in his voice was raw and unguarded. For the first time, I saw the man behind the title, the father still haunted by loss. I wanted to say something comforting, but he straightened his posture and looked away. "Dinner will be ready at 7, he said, retreating like a soldier returning to his post. That night, I sat by my window, writing in my notebook again. He hides behind his wealth. I wrote, but even marble walls cannot muffle guilt. Downstairs, through the silence, I heard faint piano keys, again hesitant, searching, broken. I closed my eyes and listened, realizing the melody was the same one from the music box. He was playing it for her. And for a moment I understood. Maybe healing this house was never just about helping a little girl speak again. Maybe it was about helping a man remember how to feel alive. The next few days felt like walking through fog, soft and uncertain. Every morning I arrived in the playroom with my notebook and a small plan, something new to try, something that might open a door inside Lila's quiet world. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it did not. She had started responding to small gestures, though, tracing shapes I drew, humming softly when I played the music box. But the house still breathed in silence, like it was afraid of remembering. One evening, as the last light faded through the tall windows, Mr. Donovan appeared in the doorway. "You are still here," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Most people leave when the day ends." I smiled gently. Healing does not really follow office hours. He looked at the small pile of drawings scattered around us. "She used to love colors," he murmured, almost to himself. "After the accident, she stopped picking up crayons. I threw most of them away." His tone carried regret, not anger. I said quietly, "Sometimes we throw away what hurts to look at. It does not mean we stop loving it." He glanced at me, eyes searching. But before he could answer, the sound of glass shattering broke the moment. Lila had knocked over a vase near the shelf. She froze, trembling, her eyes wide with panic. "It is all right," I said quickly, kneeling beside her. "No one is mad. Accidents happen." But she looked terrified, as if expecting punishment. Mr. Donovan stepped forward, his expression torn between anger and helplessness. For a long second, he did not know what to do. Then he dropped to one knee beside her, taking her hand gently. "Hey," he said softly, his voice shaking. "You are safe. Daddy is not angry. You are safe." It was the first time I had heard him call himself Daddy. Lila blinked, her lips parting just slightly, and a tiny sob escaped. Then she clung to him, burying her face in his chest. I turned away to give them space, but tears blurred my vision too. That night, after Lila had fallen asleep, Mr. Donovan found me in the hallway. "I froze back there," he said quietly. "I saw the vase break, and all I could think about was that night, the crash, the sound, His jaw tightened as if fighting back emotion. She was in the back seat. I should have protected them both. I wanted to tell him it was not his fault, but he continued. I have built companies, empires even, but I cannot rebuild my own family. The confession hung between us like a fragile truth. I said softly, families are not built, Mr. Donovan. They are healed piece by piece. He stared at me for a long moment, then gave a faint, almost disbelieving smile. You talk like someone who is lost, too. I nodded, feeling the ache of memory rise. My mother, I said. She believed healing people was a calling, not a job. I used to think she was naive, but now I think she was just right. He did not respond, but his eyes softened. When he left, I felt something shift in the house, as if a door had cracked open. Over the next week, small changes followed. Lila started leaving her room without prompting, trailing after me during lessons, humming to the tune of the music box. Mr. Donovan began joining us for breakfast, sometimes even lunch. The staff whispered about it like it was a miracle. One afternoon, while Lila was coloring by the window, he leaned toward me and said quietly, "She has not done that in a year." His voice was full of quiet awe. "You are doing something right." I shook my head. "We are all doing it. She just needed to feel safe again." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting gold light over the marble floor, I caught him watching us. And for the first time since I arrived, his eyes did not look haunted. They looked alive. Still, part of me wondered if helping his daughter was my job. Why did it suddenly feel like I was the one being saved? By the second month, the mansion no longer felt like a museum. The halls still echoed, but now they carried laughter, faint and delicate, like sunlight sneaking through old curtains. Every morning, Lila waited for me at the doorway, holding her little notebook, eager to start our word games. She had not spoken yet, not fully, but her humming grew louder, her gestures more alive. Even Mr. Donovan began to linger near the doorway, coffee in hand, pretending to check emails while secretly watching us. One morning, he stepped closer and asked, "Does she ever try to form words?" I smiled. "Not yet, but she is listening. That is the first step." He nodded, the corners of his mouth softening. "You are good with her. Better than anyone we have had." "Thank you," I said, then paused. "You are good with her too. She just needs to see you try." He looked at me as if I had said something foreign. "Try?" I nodded. "To play. To talk. Even if she does not answer. Children do not need perfect parents. They need present ones." His eyes darkened with thought, and he said nothing more. But later that evening, I heard laughter. His laughter. From the playroom. When I peeked inside, he was wearing a paper crown Lila had made and pretending to be the king of pancakes. It was awkward and heartwarming all at once. When he saw me at the door, he gave an embarrassed smile. "She ordered me to wear it," he said. "You look like you are taking your royal duties seriously." I teased, and for the first time, he actually laughed a sound I had not realized I missed until that moment. Days turned into small miracles. Lila started whispering tiny sounds, incomplete but real. She said, "Ma," once, and we both froze, unsure if we had heard it right. "Mr." Donovan's eyes filled instantly, and he turned away, pretending to wipe something from his sleeve. After that, everything changed. He began spending more time at home, canceling meetings, joining us for lessons. The staff called it the house's second spring. One evening, after Lila had gone to bed, we sat in the quiet kitchen, sharing a pot of tea. "You have done more for her in weeks than I have in a year," he said softly. "I do not know how to thank you." I looked at him across the table, the soft kitchen light warming his face. "You do not need to thank me. You are the reason she is healing. You showed up." He stared at his cup, tracing the rim with his thumb. Showing up is easy when someone like you reminds me how. For a moment, silence stretched between us, comfortable yet charged. I wanted to change the subject but could not. You know, I said gently, sometimes we try to fix others because we do not want to face what is broken in ourselves. His gaze lifted to mine, steady and searching. And what about you, Claire? What are you trying to fix? The question hit deeper than I expected. I swallowed hard. Maybe my faith, I admitted, that good people still exist, that healing is worth it, even if it hurts. He nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Then maybe we are both here for the same reason. The air felt heavier, but not in a bad way, more like something unspoken had found its place. Then, from upstairs, a small voice broke the stillness. Daddy? It was faint but unmistakable. We froze. He shot up from his chair, nearly spilling his tea, and raced upstairs with me close behind. Lila was standing by her bed, eyes wide and trembling. Say it again, he whispered, kneeling in front of her. Her lips quivered. Daddy, she repeated, a single word that shattered the silence of a year. He pulled her into his arms, his body shaking. And for the first time since I met him, tears ran freely down his face. I stood in the doorway, my own tears, falling before I could stop them. That one word had undone every wall in this house. It was not just Lila who had found her voice. It was him, too. The morning after Lila spoke, her first word felt like the sun had risen differently. The air in the mansion seemed lighter, the silence no longer heavy, but full of quiet wonder. Everyone smiled more. Even the staff who tried to hide their tears when they saw Mr. Donovan carrying his daughter down the grand staircase. He held her close, whispering things no one else could hear, as if he was afraid that letting go would break the spell. When he looked at me, his eyes were red but alive. She said it again, he said softly, his voice trembling. She said Daddy 3 times this morning. I smiled, my own heart swelling. She is finding her way back to you. He nodded, still in disbelief. Maybe we both are. For the next few weeks, the mansion transformed completely. Lila's laughter filled the rooms like sunlight. She painted, she sang soft sounds. She asked for bedtime stories again. Every time she called him Daddy, I could see a piece of his guilt crumble away. Sometimes he would glance at me with a look that lingered too long, one that said more than words could. I tried not to read into it, but something inside me began to shift, too. One evening, after a day of lessons, he invited me to stay for dinner. It was just the 3 of us, sitting at the same long dining table that had once felt like a battlefield of silence. Lila chattered in half words, proud of every sound. At one point, she looked at me and whispered, Claire, thank you. It was not perfect, but it was beautiful. Mr. Donovan's fork froze midair, and his voice broke when he said, You are giving her back her childhood. I shook my head gently. She is giving it back to herself. I just gave her a little space to find it. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said he was remembering what joy felt like. After dinner, when Lila was asleep, he found me on the back patio. The night air was cool, the city lights glittering beyond the hills. I do not know how to say this, he began, his tone uncertain, but you have changed everything. This house, my daughter, me. I looked down at my hands, unsure how to answer. You do not have to say anything. It is what I am here for. He took a slow breath. That is the thing. I am starting to forget where your job ends and where something else begins. His honesty startled me. For a moment, the only sound was the wind moving through the trees. Mr. Donovan, I said carefully, I care about both of you, but my place here has always been professional. He nodded, though his eyes told another story. I know, but it does not change the fact that you brought life back into this home, into me. The words hung between us, fragile and real. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression changed. Instantly. Cold, guarded, businesslike. "It is my CFO," he muttered. "He wants to discuss the foundation's finances. He has been difficult lately." I could sense his mood closing off again. "Go," I said softly. "You should handle it." He nodded, slipping the phone into his pocket. "Good night, Claire." I watched him disappear into the dark hallway, the warmth of our moment fading behind the sound of closing doors. Later that night, I passed his office on my way to my room and overheard voices, his and another man's. The tone was sharp, tense. "You are getting too distracted," the other man snapped. "This caregiver is overstepping. The board will not like it." Mr. Donovan's reply was firm but controlled. "She stays. Because for the first time in a long time, my daughter is happy. That is all that matters." I stood frozen in the shadows, a mix of gratitude and fear twisting in my chest. The mansion had become more than a workplace. It had become a heartbeat, and I was terrified of what would happen when someone tried to silence it again. The tension began quietly, like a storm building behind closed doors. For days after that late-night argument, Mr. Donovan seemed distracted again, distant, as if he was being pulled back into the world he had tried to leave behind. He spent hours locked in his study, phone pressed to his ear, his voice sharp in ways I had not heard in weeks. Lila noticed too. She would peek into the hall and ask, "Is Daddy mad again?" I knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "No, sweetheart. Daddy is just busy. Sometimes grown-ups forget how to slow down." She nodded, but her small eyes looked uncertain. I could feel the weight of his world creeping back into hers. One evening, after putting Lila to bed, I knocked gently on his office door. The sound of typing stopped. "Come in," he said flatly. Papers were scattered across his desk, financial reports and legal documents covered in red ink. He looked up, exhaustion written all over him. "Everything all right?" I asked softly. He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "My CFO thinks you are a distraction. He believes this, whatever is happening here, is making me weak." I folded my arms, meeting his gaze. "Helping your daughter is not weakness. It is humanity." He rubbed his temples. "In his eyes, those two things are the same." "And in yours?" I asked quietly. He hesitated. "In mine, they used to be." His eyes lifted to mine then, raw and unguarded. "Until you." The confession hung between us, heavier than the silence that followed. My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Mr. Donovan," I began, but he cut me off. "Call me Ethan," he said. The name felt strange on my tongue. "Ethan, I am here because of your daughter. That is all." He gave a small, sad smile. "I know, and that is exactly why I cannot lose you." I stepped back, trying to find the line that had started to blur weeks ago. "Do not say things you will regret." His voice softened. "I do not regret anything that makes me feel alive again." For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. But before I could respond, the office phone rang, breaking the moment. He answered sharply, his tone turning businesslike again. "Yes, I will handle it," he snapped, ending the call. The spell was broken. I turned toward the door. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Claire," he said, but his voice carried something like apology. The next morning, the storm finally hit. When I arrived downstairs, the CFO, a man named Richard Hale, was already there, his expression smug and condescending. "So this is the miracle worker," he said coldly, glancing at me. "I suppose you are the reason he is ignoring the company's crisis." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You will watch your tone," he warned. "Miss Bennett is here as my daughter's therapist, nothing more." Richard scoffed. "That is not what the staff says. They think she is playing house while you forget your shareholders." His words cut through the room like glass. Ethan stood abruptly, fury in his eyes. "Get out," he said. "Before I forget you work for me." Richard smirked. I will go, but the board will hear about this. When he left, the silence that followed was suffocating. I tried to speak, but Ethan stopped me. He is not entirely wrong, he said bitterly. I have been distracted. You and Lila. You make me forget everything else. I shook my head. Forgetting is not the same as healing. You were never meant to live in guilt forever. He looked at me then, eyes glassy with something close to despair. You make it sound easy. It is not easy, I said softly, but it is worth it. That night, as I wrote in my notebook, I felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down. The house had become a sanctuary, but storms never spare the places we love most. And I could not shake the feeling that the hardest part of this story had only just begun. The following week, everything began to fall apart. The board meeting that Richard Hale had warned about finally took place, and by the time Ethan returned home that evening, I could see the defeat written all over him. His tie was loosened, his shoulders slumped, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked smaller than the man the world called a billionaire. They want me to take a leave of absence, he said quietly. They think I have lost focus, that I am not fit to run the company while I am distracted. I set down the cup of tea I had made and looked at him carefully. Distracted by what? By being a father again? His jaw tightened, his voice bitter. They do not see it that way. To them, empathy is weakness. Caring is liability. He sank onto the sofa, elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped together. I built that empire by being ruthless, by never letting anyone in. And now, because I finally did, they are ready to take everything away. I walked closer and said softly, maybe that is because they never saw you at your best. This version of you, Ethan, the one who fights for his daughter, that is strength. He lifted his head slowly, his eyes weary but searching. You really believe that? I do, I said. And Lila does too. He smiled faintly, but it faded as quickly as it came. The board is demanding changes. Richard has made it clear he intends to replace me. He even threatened to question your employment, said it looked unprofessional to have you living here. My heart sank. You do not believe him, do you? Of course not, he said quickly. But they are forcing me into a corner. They are using you to get to me. The words stung more than I expected. So, what will you do? I asked. He hesitated, then said the thing I feared most. I might have to let you go, just for a while. Until I fix this. The air left my lungs. You cannot mean that, Lila. I know, he interrupted, his voice breaking. She will hate me for it. But if I do not act now, they will destroy everything I have built. Everything that keeps her safe. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of the clock ticking filled the space between us, counting down the seconds until something would break. Finally, I said quietly, if this is what you think you have to do, I will not fight it. But know this, Ethan, you are not protecting her by pushing love away. You are repeating your pain. His throat worked as he swallowed hard. You think I do not know that? He stood abruptly and turned away, his back to me. I cannot lose her. Not again. I wanted to reach out, but something told me I could not save him from this choice. Then promise me one thing, I said. Do not let her believe she was the reason I left. He nodded without turning around. I would never do that. The next morning, I packed my things quietly. Lila's drawings covered the walls of the playroom, each one brighter than the last. When she saw the suitcase by the door, her eyes filled with confusion. You're going? She whispered, her voice fragile. I knelt down and took her hands in mine. Only for a little while, I said gently. You are so brave, Lila. Keep singing, keep painting, and keep making your daddy smile, all right? Tears rolled down her cheeks, and she threw her arms around my neck. Do not go, she cried softly. My heart broke, but I forced a smile. I will see you again. I promise. Ethan stood a few feet away, silent, guilt shadowing every line of his face. When I walked past him, I whispered, "You are making a mistake." He did not reply. The door closed behind me, and the echo felt final. As I stepped into the cold evening air, I looked back at the mansion glowing against the fading light. It had once felt like a home. Now it was just a place filled with love that no one was brave enough to hold on to. 2 weeks passed after I left the mansion, and each day felt like moving through a fog I could not escape. I had found temporary work at a small community clinic downtown, helping children with speech therapy. But nothing filled the silence that followed me home every night. Sometimes I would hear echoes of Lila's laughter in my head and wonder if she was still singing to her music box or if she had gone quiet again. I missed her. I missed him too, though I would never say it out loud. One evening, after another long day, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. It was plain, unmarked, but inside was a photograph Lila standing on a stage at what looked like a small school recital, smiling brightly, holding a painting of a heart. At the bottom, written in her uneven handwriting, were the words, "For Claire." My eyes filled instantly. There was no note, no signature, but I knew who had sent it. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my old therapy notebook. On one of the last pages, I had written a quote from my mother. "Love that heals is love that stays, even when it has to walk away." I whispered it out loud, realizing how true it had become. The next morning, I arrived at the clinic early, trying to focus. When one of the receptionists called out, "Claire, there is someone asking for you." My heart skipped, but when I turned around, it was not who I expected. It was Richard Hale. His suit was immaculate as ever, but his expression was smug. "Miss Bennett," he greeted, his tone smooth and cold. "I come bearing news. Mr. Donovan has resigned." The board forced his hand. "He has decided to step down and disappear for a while. I suppose you should feel proud. You were quite the distraction." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "You have no idea what he was fighting for." Richard smirked. "Oh, I do. I just do not care. He was a good businessman until he started caring about things that do not make money." He turned to leave, but I stopped him. "Tell him something for me," I said sharply. "Tell him that the only thing he ever lost was the part of himself he stopped believing in." He did not respond, just gave a small, mocking smile before walking away. The moment he left, I knew I could not stay still. I grabbed my coat and left the clinic, the cold wind cutting against my face as I headed toward the one place I knew he might be the art center he had once funded in honor of his late wife. It was quiet when I arrived. The gallery lights dim, the scent of fresh paint lingering in the air. But at the far end of the hall, I saw him. Ethan stood alone, hands in his pockets, staring at a large canvas that was covered by a white sheet. When he turned and saw me, surprise flickered across his face, then relief. "Claire," he said softly, as if saying my name hurt and healed him all at once. "You should not be here." "And yet, I am," I said, stepping closer. "Richard came to see me. He told me everything." His jaw tightened. "Then, you know, I failed." "No," I said firmly. "You chose your daughter over your pride. That is not failure. That is love." He looked down, shaking his head. "I lost everything." "Not everything," I whispered. "You still have her. And maybe, if you stop hiding, you will realize that she is all that ever mattered." His eyes met mine then, raw and full of regret. "I never wanted to let you go," he said. "But I thought it was the only way to protect you." I stepped closer, tears stinging my eyes. "You cannot protect people by leaving them, Ethan. You protect them by standing with them." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he took a deep breath and pulled the white sheet away from the canvas. My heart caught in my throat. It was a painting, a collage of Leela's drawings woven together into one masterpiece. In the corner, in delicate letters, it read, "The art of healing for Claire." I covered my mouth. tears spilling freely. He said quietly, "She and I made it together. She wanted to show you that she did not forget." I could not speak. The painting said everything words never could. And for the first time, I realized this was not an ending. It was the beginning of something brave, something healed. The following months unfolded like the slow blooming of spring after a long winter. Ethan returned to the mansion, not as the cold and distant man I had first met, but as a father who finally understood what mattered. The company he once ruled from a glass tower was no longer his world. His world was Lila, her laughter echoing through the halls again, and the life he had built out of love instead of guilt. I visited often at first, helping Lila transition back into a full routine, but as time passed, it felt less like work and more like coming home. One afternoon, the mansion was alive with sound music, laughter, and the faint scent of vanilla cupcakes. It was the opening of the new foundation. Lila's Garden, a center Ethan had built to support children recovering from trauma, funded entirely by his private fortune. As guests mingled in the grand hall, Ethan stood by the entrance greeting them, his expression calm and proud. When he saw me, his face lit up with that same quiet warmth that had once made my heart race. "You came," he said softly. I smiled. "You really thought I would miss this?" He chuckled. "You would be surprised how many people told me I was crazy to build something that does not turn a profit. Maybe that is how you know it is worth it," I replied. His eyes softened. "You sound like someone who belongs here." Before I could answer, a familiar little voice called out, "Claire." Lila ran toward me, holding a bouquet of daisies. "These are for you. Daddy says they are your favorite." I knelt and hugged her tightly. "They are perfect," I whispered. She beamed, her words clear and confident now. "Daddy says you helped him too." I glanced at Ethan, who looked away shyly. "He helped himself," I said gently. But Lila shook her head. "No, you both did." Her simple truth nearly undid me. Later that evening, when most guests had left, I found myself walking through the quiet gallery where the painting still hung, "The Art of Healing for Claire." I stood in front of it, tracing the brushstrokes with my eyes, remembering every moment that had led us here. Behind me, Ethan's voice broke the silence. "She wanted to give you something more," he said. When I turned, he was holding a small envelope. Inside was a key engraved with the initials LG. "It is the key to the center," he said. "I want you to run it with me. You were there from the beginning. This was never just my dream. It was ours." My breath caught. "Ethan, I cannot—" "You can," he interrupted softly. "Because you believed in something when I did not. You saved my daughter, and somehow, you saved me too." He stepped closer, his voice trembling with emotion. "You taught me that healing is not about forgetting the past. It is about finding someone who helps you live again." My eyes blurred with tears. "And you taught me that love is not weakness. It is what makes us human." For a moment, the world stood still. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, my old therapy notebook. "You left this behind," he said. "I thought it was mine to keep. But now, I think it belongs here." He opened it to the page with my mother's quote, the one that said, "Love that heals is love that stays, even when it has to walk away." He smiled, faintly. "You walked away once, but you still stayed, in every way that mattered." I felt his hand slip into mine, steady and sure. The room around us seemed to fade, replaced by the quiet hum of peace that had been missing for so long. Lila's laughter echoed down the hallway, bright and free. Ethan looked at me and whispered, "Welcome home, Claire." And for the first time, I knew I truly was. Because sometimes, healing is not about finding a new place. It is about finally belonging where love never left.